Starting seeds in April is completely different than January, February, or even March. And this is where a lot of gardeners start going wrong. Because by this point in the season, starting seeds indoors can actually slow your plants down instead of speeding them up. And that sounds backwards because for months you've been told to start early, get ahead, use lights, use trays, indoors. But in April, the advice has to change. Once your outdoor conditions improve, every extra step starting inside, potting up, then transplanting, all that adds time, it adds stress, and it can actually delay your plants compared to seeds that go straight into the ground. We're gonna keep this really, really simple. What to still start indoors, what to move outside, and the one mistake I see every April that causes more frustration than anything else. Because April isn't just another planting month, it's a transition point. Up until now, most of your focus has probably been indoors. Grow lights, seed trays, heat mats, dialing everything in. And early in the season, that's exactly what you want. You're trying to beat the weather. But April is where things start to flip. The days are longer, the sun is stronger, the air is warming up, and most importantly, your soil is starting to warm up. And once your soil warms up, it becomes a better growing environment than your indoor setup for a lot of crops. And this is the part most people miss because they keep doing what worked in February, even though the conditions have changed. At this point in the season, seeds planted directly in the ground will often catch up to and even pass seedlings that were started indoors because they never get root bound, they don't stretch under weaker indoor light, they don't get stressed in containers or go through transplant shock. They just grow in place. So if you didn't get started indoors earlier, you're okay. So instead of asking, how can I start everything early? You want to ask, what can I simplify? And for a lot of crops, that means skipping indoors altogether, especially now this time of year. Now, the part that makes this tricky is it depends a lot on where you live because April in one climate can look completely different than April somewhere else. And that's exactly why we built GardenGuide.com. You can plug in your location and it tells you exactly what to start, when to plant, and what your timing actually looks like. And then how best to take care of your plants throughout the season based on your location. And it's totally free. I'll link that below if you want to dial this in for your area. Now, there are still some things that make sense to start indoors in April, especially depending on where you are, but it's selective and strategic. If you haven't started tomatoes yet, this is your last real window to do it indoors, but here's the key difference with tomatoes. These can go outside much earlier than most people think. Tomatoes actually handle cooler conditions pretty well. The thing with tomatoes, once they hit real soil, especially soil that's starting to warm, they really kind of amp things up. Instead of just growing leaves, they start focusing on root development. That's something you just don't get in a small container indoors. So even if they look smaller when you plant them out, they often catch up fast and they can pass plants that stayed inside too long. So if the nighttime temperatures are in the even lower 50s, you can still move your tomatoes outdoors as long as you're past your frost date. So with tomatoes in April, earlier outside is usually better than longer inside. Peppers are the opposite. They want heat, warm air, warm soil, and consistency. If soil temperatures are low, peppers just don't slow down, they stall. And sometimes they have a hard time picking things up again. And that's where people get frustrated. They plant peppers at the same time as tomatoes, expecting the same results, and nothing happens. They just sit there. There's no growth, no movement. And it's not you, it's the conditions. Peppers are waiting for heat. Once that heat shows up, they'll take off. But until then, they're just sitting still. So while tomatoes can move outside earlier, peppers need to stay inside longer. You're looking for nighttime temperatures in the 60s, even low 60s, preferably mid 60s is best. If you treat peppers like tomatoes, you'll struggle every year. Basil is a warm weather herb that really doesn't tolerate cold. Even a mild cold night can set it back. So April is still a great time to start basil indoors. It germinates quickly, it grows fast, and it transitions pretty easily into the garden once the outdoor conditions are right. Now, a quick tip is don't overwater basil early. Too much moisture indoors can slow growth and cause issues. Cucumbers, squash, zucchini. This is one of the biggest slowdowns I see in April because yes, you can start these indoors, but they grow fast, really fast. And what happens is they outgrow their containers and their roots get crowded and growth begins to be uneven. And then you transplant them and they stall. And this is probably one of the biggest hidden slowdowns this time of year because a seed planted directly in the ground doesn't deal with any of that. So if you start these choices indoors, keep it to 2 to 3 weeks before you transplant them outside. You have a much better time with that. Now, in most April conditions, it's faster to just plant them outside. Yes, there are a few of you up north where you're still struggling with some cold weather right now, but the whole indoor takeaway is indoor starting is no longer your default. Really pay attention to your climate. Go to GardenGuide.com. It'll tell you what to do. But now you really want to shift your thought process from indoor starting being your default to now thinking about it being kind of selective, situational, and often at this time of year, unnecessary. This is where April really starts to work for you because now your soil is doing the work. Beans love warm soil. Once temperatures start to rise, they germinate fast and they grow aggressively. You can plant them and see results quickly. Another advantage is beans fix nitrogen in the soil, so they actually improve the soil as they grow. On the other hand, their roots are actually very delicate and they don't transplant well, so I never start my beans indoors. I always direct sow them. Corn is a heavy feeder and a fast grower. It needs space, sunlight, and proper pollination. A big key with corn is you don't want to plant a long row of corn. You want to plant it in blocks, maybe like 4, 4, 4, 4. This improves pollination and gives you fuller ears. The thing about corn is that it's wind pollinated. There's tassels on the top, that's the male portion of the plant, and then there's the corn silk, which is the female portion of the plant. The pollen has to travel from the tassels at the top to the corn silk. And if you've got one line of corn and the wind is blowing this way, it blows the pollen onto everything else, but not onto another corn plant. So planting in blocks, no matter which way the wind is blowing, they're going to be pollinated. Corn also establishes a root system early, which is why transplanting isn't ideal. Direct sowing gives you the best start. Carrots are all about the root. That root starts forming early, and if it gets disturbed early, the shape is affected. That's why transplanting isn't the best solution for carrots. You can start them indoors early if you really need to get a head start on things, but you don't want to leave them in those cells too long. They really like loose soil, consistent moisture, minimal disturbance. So April is perfect for carrots because the soil's workable and conditions are improving. Radishes are one of the easiest wins. They've got fast growth, quick harvest, and low effort. You can plant them every 1 to 2 weeks and keep harvesting because they grow so quickly. And with radishes, direct sowing is the best option. With squash, zucchini, and cucumbers, this is where April decisions matter most because yes, you can start them indoors, but in April, it's usually faster to plant them outside. They germinate quickly, they establish fast, and they don't like transplanting. So unless your soil is still really cold, skip the indoor step. Melons need warmth and time. They grow best when planted directly into warm soil. And starting indoors often leads to root disturbance and slower establishment. So once conditions are right, direct sowing is the best option. So the bottom line is if your outdoor conditions are good enough, skipping the indoor step is usually faster because you're removing transplant shock and container stress. If there's one mistake I see every April, it's starting too much indoors. And it feels productive, but what actually happens is the opposite. Plants either grow too fast in their containers, the roots get crowded, growth becomes stunted, and they have a really hard time transferring outside. Every transplant comes with a cost. The plant pauses, it adjusts, and it recovers. And during that time, it's not growing and moving you towards your harvest. Meanwhile, a direct sown seed is already moving forward. So this is the shift. Earlier isn't always better. More steps isn't always better for the plant or for you. Sometimes the fastest way to grow a plant is to let it start where it's going to finish. Broccoli and cauliflower need cool weather and a lot of time. And by April, in most climates, I'm not talking about the northerners, but most climates, they don't have enough of either. And so they'll bolt before producing. So at this point, skip them now and focus on what thrives now. For those of you who's getting too warm right now for all those cool season crops, remember this in the fall, late summer to fall. I'll come back with you at that time and give you a reminder, so make sure you're subscribed. If you want to simplify everything, if it grows fast, plant it outside. If it hates cold, this is your last call to start them indoors. And if it needs cool weather, in most places, you're too late. And one more thing, if your outdoor conditions are good enough, skipping indoors is faster. It's the biggest thing to remember. And that's the shift we make in April. So stop trying to force everything indoors at this time of year and start letting the season do the work for you. If you want exact timing for your area, again, check out GardenGuide.com. It's totally free, and dial in that for your location. But if you follow this right here, you'll avoid one of the biggest slowdowns I see at this time of year. And if you're growing tomatoes this year, I've got one simple thing that can make a big difference in your harvest. Check out this video right here, and I'll see you guys next time.